Beloved, I wish above all things that thou mayest prosper and be in health. But then the conclusion of the matter, even as thy soul prospereth. Please do not neglect the correlation between physical and spiritual health. A lot of the reason why I do what I do, because here's what I find out. I go out and I speak at a church. And some people even question, why should I be speaking on health on Sabbath? And I don't have a problem with that, because I see this as a continuum. I don't see you as just spiritual. I don't see you as just physical. I don't see you just social. I don't have a disconnect. But the point I'm making is that when you go out, and then I have people come up to me, if I'm back in a year or whatever, and they'll come up and they'll say something like this. You know, I tried out what you said. And it's helped me a lot physically. And then I like the second part. It's made all the difference to me spiritually. You see, the brain has to wake up. Otherwise, those most sacred truths that we hold in our hand, in our Bible, do not make the impact. See, God can only talk to you, and He can only talk to me if I have proper comprehension. So the reason for the health message, technically, is not longevity. Yes, I'm not trying to commit suicide. I like to live. But that's not the real issue. The real issue is your mind. Does God have your heart? He said He wants to give us a new mind. He asked us a very important question. Do you have the mind of Christ? Is it living in you? In other words, is your character being remade? Are you letting Christ live in your heart? And you won't perceive that until your brain is healthy enough to realize what they're saying. And the impact spiritually will only become more profound and get more blessed to you the healthier you are. So if you've got no other reason to be healthy, it's for your Lord and Maker. That's why I do what I do. Because I see the spiritual connection to what we're talking about. So yes, I go out and I do a cancer prevention seminar, but you know why I'm there. Yes, I don't want anyone to get cancer. But the greater truth is I want them to have such a close walk with Jesus that if He calls sooner than what we even think, we say, Lord, thy will be done. You know what's best, regardless of the outcome. And there's a lot of things that the older I get, sometimes I think I have less answers. I was thinking I should have more answers. We finished with this slide before our break. We're still talking, obviously, about cancer. We've looked at breast cancer and tried to answer a few questions on that. This particular slide is on colon cancer. And yes, it's a rat study. And I know that you and I are not rats. But I do believe that we can learn, at least even from a rat. And that is, rats were fed different types of diets. And rats were fed a corn oil diet, and they were actually fed a lard diet. And the reason I show this is because so many people would tell me they never eat lard, but think nothing of eating corn oil. I'm saying, wait a minute. Look what we're saying here. The rats fed 10% corn oil. 36% of the rats in that group had colon tumors, cancer in the colon. 10% of the rats that were, 17% of the rats fed a 10% lard diet. And of course, at this point, I say, do not recommend that Dr. Collins said to eat lard. That is not the point of the slide. The point of the slide is to show you that an unsaturated fat in its highly oxidized state is more damaging to your cell than something you would think you'd never touch. So the whole impact of this is to never get you to touch this, not just this. Now let's push it to its logical conclusion. If we give 40% fat in the diet from corn oil or 40% fat in from lard, guess what? We get about the same results. So we're back to the beginning. Fats in their refined form are very carcinogenic. The less carcinogens, the more your immune system can handle it. Now I'm going to tell you what we don't know. I don't know from a very young person if you ate just 1 teaspoon of olive oil per day for your life, would it make any difference? We don't have any research to even answer that question. But because people want to know, well, how low? Well, quite frankly, I don't know. But I do know what works. And therefore, most people don't see me when they're 1 year old and ask me how much corn oil they should have. But I see people when they're 58 years old and they have cancer. And there's only one way that I know to start turning the picture around and giving them the best possible chance, and it's what I'm talking about here. So see, I'm coming from the therapeutic end of it. Most people I see have major health issues. I rarely get the person who walks in my office and they just say, I'm so healthy, I can't stand it, and I just want you to know make sure I'm on the right track. Well, that would make my day, I'll tell you. Once again, colon cancer. We're looking at men here. Not that women don't get colon cancer, but this slide's about men, not rats. Fat consumption across the bottom. You've seen this slide. I'm going to change this window here. It may help us a little bit. That ain't better? Yes. Colon cancer, and once again, fat consumption. The more fat we consume, the more cancer we get. Fats do something to the cell to make them very vulnerable to genetic change. They actually change the DNA. And then it transmits that to the next cell and the next cell, and 3 or 4 or 5 generations down the road, we have a cell that's acting very abnormally. Like we said this morning, it wants to eat and not do any work. Colon and rectal cancer. Most colon tumors are in the lower part of the large intestine. 90% of the cases occurs after age 50. So it is for those of us that are a little bit older. It's the 3rd leading cause of cancer in the United States. It's the 2nd leading cause of cancer death. So not everyone that gets it dies, is what that's saying. Average lifetime risk of developing is 6%. You go, well, that's not too bad. Well, lifetime risk. Men and women are affected equally. Women are more likely to have right side colon adenomas. Okay, get out your right hand, put it on your abdomen. Where are you at? Appendix. This is appendix, the junction between your small and large intestine, and your ascending colon. Women have it here. Let's keep going. Men on the other side. Distribution evenly among various racial groups, so it's not. African Americans and Hispanics have lower survival rate. And I'm not going to give the medical community benefit for saying if they had better medical attention, they'd live longer. Because sometimes better medical attention shortens a life. So I can't even go there, okay? Unsaturated fats, and a little bit of chemistry here. Unsaturated fat means that every fat molecule should have hydrogens off every one of these C's, these carbons. As you see, this molecule doesn't have hydrogens off every one of them, and that's why it's called unsaturated. This isn't complicated. That's what an unsaturated fat looks like. Now, if you want to get fancy, look at this one. This is omega-3, because the 3rd position. So this would be considered an omega-3 fat. See, it's really simple once you look at the chemical. Now, here's the problem. When you have a double bond anywhere in the molecule, whether it's 3, 6, 9, 12, or 15 spot in this molecule, what you have is a situation where you are very vulnerable to this molecule oxidizing. And an oxidized fat is what causes things like cholesterol to build up in your vessels, what causes a normal cell to get abnormal. So now you know why we're so much against unsaturated fats in a refined form. And unsaturated fats are everything from olive all the way through to corn oil. They're considered unsaturated, and that's why we have a big problem. I'm going to have to stop walking over there. This lady's going to get me for her cello. Prostate cancer, once again for men, per 100,000 population. Fat consumption. These slides look all the same. Have you noticed? By the way, I didn't make them up. I copied these. But the reason they all look the same is because we've got the same problem. Remember I told you? A healthy lifestyle has something in common. An unhealthy lifestyle has something in common. When you change your lifestyle, obviously reducing your fat, you're going to get a lower risk. It's that simple. The United States is here and Italy is here. The reason I show Italy is because some people are totally convinced that olive oil is healthy. No, it's just less harmful. There's a difference. Dr. Campbell, the China study, you know I like to talk about this because it's an incredible study, number one. And number two, he came to the right conclusions. Now why am I so bold in saying that? The reason I know he came to the right conclusions is because he agrees with God. Yeah, it's really easy. See, we have a lot of health practitioners out there that don't have the spirit of prophecy. I have this incredible advantage over so many health researchers. You know why? Because I study God's prophet, and I believe that God instructed her in what she's saying. So therefore, I haven't had to change my tune. And by the way, it's getting close to 40 years I've been in practice, if you can believe that. It's hard for me to believe it. But the point I'm getting at is I haven't had to change one single thing over 40 years. There's no other theory in medicine that hasn't changed in 40 years. They've changed their diets. They say this doesn't work anymore. We were wrong here. Folks, you're not wrong. The little red books don't need to change because they come from the person who made you. Amen. Dr. Colin Campbell, China study is actually two studies. The early study and the latter study. The first study was just on mainland China. The second study was mainland China and Taiwan. And the reason he did that is because he had Chinese that grew up here and moved to here. And he saw their change in lifestyle and reported them because he knew in one generation he could go back and say, okay, you ate this way here and you had this much cancer. You've eaten this way here, and oh no. You're copying the rest of the world, or the Western world, the United States. So what he did is he went to the Philippines in his younger career, and he said the problem why we have such a high risk of liver cancer in the Philippines is because these people are not getting their protein. That's our problem. He said, so as a food scientist, I'm going to go to the Philippines and design ways and methods to get these people more protein. Okay, well, by the way, that wasn't unusual back in the 1970s. That was typical standard procedure. So he goes to the Philippines, he says, okay, people who live along the shore, live close to the ocean, we have a problem. We can just give them fish. But we have no good way of preserving or keeping fish fresh for the inland people. So the inland people, he says, okay, what we'll do there is we'll grow peanuts. The problem is, in the climate and the humidity and the warmth of the Philippines, they were much more susceptible to molding in that storage of peanuts. And the mold on the peanuts is an aflatoxin, and that aflatoxin is, we know, is carcinogenic to the liver. So, and during that period of time, his mother-in-law got very sick. She had liver cancer. And then he comes up because I remember reading an article from an Indian, as in the country of India, not an American Indian, article that said that what they found in their population was the people who ate the most protein in India had the most liver cancer. And he goes, and I'm trying to feed these people. He says, what am I doing wrong? Totally changed his thinking. He comes back and he goes to the laboratory and he says, okay, let's check out the theory. Let's see if it's valid. What is causing cancer? So he feeds laboratory rats different amounts of protein. 5% rats on 5% diet, which by the way is a very meager amount. Cows eating grass get a lot more than 5%. And I'm not recommending you need that, but that's what we got. A very low rate of cancer growth. He says, incredible. Laboratory rats, fed 20% of their diet from protein, had a high rate of cancer growth. So high protein diets in America over the past 50 years are responsible for millions of deaths. So you may be a weightlifter, you may think you need more protein, you may have even bought into having a protein shake instead of eating a good breakfast, you may have bought a lot of lies, etc., etc. I hope that I can diffuse a few of them. Another study, again by Dr. Standish, Dr. Colin Campbell, we'll get the right brothers here. See, I can say that in this audience, you know who I'm talking about. Set up another study, 2 groups of laboratory rats. One group of rats, he injected a high dose of aflatoxin. That was his carcinogen he used. And he put them on a low protein diet. So they had a high dose of cancer-causing agent on a low protein diet, and they developed a low response to cancer. Do you realize that we are surrounded by an environment that's very carcinogenic? The world we live in right now. So the least we can do is follow the example of these rats. Now, the next group of rats injected a low dose of the aflatoxin, fed them a high protein diet, and they got a high response. Do you realize what's happening? There's no doubt we live in a toxic environment. That's not what we're doubting. What we are trying to figure out is how do we survive? So this is another tip on survival. So he brought it to another conclusion. He says, okay, what is the ideal amount of protein that I should feed my rats, once again? And so he says foci development. In other words, tumors. How many tumors do they have? And so he started out. He said the group dietary protein, a 4% protein in the diet, which by the way is very low, they had minimal to no tumors, maybe 4% out of the whole group. A 6% diet was about the same. An 8% diet stepped up a little bit, and he says, I'm going to be recommending a 10%. And I say, well, 10% has a much higher cancer rate than 4%. Okay, but look at the evidence. To go from 10 to 12 is 2.5 times. So now you see what the research is. Now, his opinion is here. 12 is definitely not. 14%. By the time you get to 20% protein in the diet, about 85 to 88% of that group develop cancer. So there's no doubt about 20%. There's no doubt about 14%. There's no doubt about 12%. The question is, where in this group do you want to be? The question is, how much do you need to be healthy? We have populations in good health living at 8% and doing well. So I can safely say that at this point. Could you survive on 4%? I don't know. Remember those pictures? It's been probably 25, maybe more years, and they showed us a lot of news on Ethiopia and the famines they were having. And you see these children, 3, 4, 5-year-old children, incredibly swollen abdomens. And by the way, they weren't fat, because if you look at their arms, you could almost see the outline of the bones. They were starving to death. And so they said, these poor children, they need more protein. Well, technically, they were correct. The reason that they had a swollen abdomen is because your blood vessels, when the protein level gets so low, they start to leak. So the molecule of protein actually keeps your blood vessels from being leaky. So that was fluid in there. But they didn't need more protein, they needed rice. If they just had rice to eat and enough of it, they would be fine. You don't start giving a child like that protein powders and we say, oh, we have to have protein. Look what happened to them when their protein was low. Their protein was probably at 2%, 3%, 4%, or basically zero because they were starving. They didn't have anything to eat. And that's what the body does. So, try to answer this question any more clearly. I would set it at least at 8% and you're fine. But here's the point. Where did God set it at? See, I think we should look at the basic contents of the food and set it there. Did you know that broccoli is 45% protein? Now don't stop eating broccoli, because It's 45% of the calories that are in broccoli. Broccoli is very low in calories. Therefore, you'd have to eat a couple bushels of broccoli a day before I'm worried about you getting too much protein. And you're not going to do that. So I'm safe in recommending broccoli. But the reason I'm recommending broccoli is so that you don't get confused about why the cow is doing so good. You see, green grass out there that you passed acres of on the way here is actually above 8% protein. We can't digest it because we don't have the same enzymes that a cow has. But if you had the same enzymes, the cow gets plenty of protein to build all that animal. I was going to say steak, but I don't want you eating that. To build that large of an animal on grass. See, it gets pretty simple when you start looking around you and look at examples that God has made. And even celery, that food that you may consider half worthless, is still about 22% protein. But how many stalks of celery would you have to eat in a day to be too much protein? I don't know. 20 or 30? You see, God has got a built-in way of handling my waistline. I cannot overeat on what God has given me. And He puts nuts in a hard shell for a reason. And if you had to crack all the nuts that you eat that we go to the store and buy a bag of, start out with hickories and then go to black walnuts, and you'll starve before you get enough meat. No, you won't. But it does take more work, and that's why you sit by the fireplace and throw the hulls in, which makes a good fire, and you pick out the meats when it's cold outside. Okay. Dr. Longo, PhD, is a gerontologist, so he studied old folks. Put him on a high-protein diet, and he says, okay, my high-protein diet is greater than 20% of the calories. And we already know from Dr. Campbell's work that that is not a good idea. But here's what he found out. He said those who eat 20% of their calories or more from protein had a 74% increase in overall mortality. That means they died. So he's confirming that in the age 50 to 65. But his unique part of this research came out the next thing. He said 28% reduction in overall mortality for those aged 65 and older. Wait a minute, does age 65 or older, does that mean you need more protein? Well, I'm going, maybe they don't absorb it as well. I mean, you try to figure out what this research means. But then he brought out two more points that clears it up totally. A fourfold increased risk of dying from cancer in the younger group, and a fivefold increase of dying, not just getting diabetes, but dying from diabetes for all ages, the whole group. So let me ask you a question. Do you want a 28% improvement for a 500% increase in death rate? You see the point. When we look at the whole picture, it is not an advantage to giving people extra protein at any age. Moderate, he called that 10 or 20%, and they put low protein at less than 10%. I don't consider that low protein. It is true that our protein needs change as we grow up. But I want to tell you something about ladies. They are so absolutely incredible. We've got more ladies here. Hopefully you'll agree with me. When you are nursing your child, your protein mixture in the mammary milk changes as that child grows. There's no formula in the world that can keep up with that. And so when the child is first born, they take the highest amount of protein. And through that first year, their protein requirement continues to go down, and so does mom. Because obviously she's feeding them. And you follow that child through until we consider an adult, and if you like math, it's 0.8 gram of protein per kilogram body weight if you want to calculate what you need. And that is the RDA. That's the recommended daily allowance in America. And I think that is high. That is excessive. Back to my slide. So we have this risk of these various diseases on a high protein versus low protein. And then here's the part you're going to like. The relationship disappeared if you're eating only animal proteins. Or if you eat plant protein. Boy, I'm glad you're with me. It's not after lunch yet.
Are you really Dr. Collins?
So, relationship disappeared if you're eating only plant protein. We're not made to eat animal protein. That's what it comes down to. Your intestine isn't made that way. Look at carnivores and look at your intestine. Look at your dog. You can almost draw a straight line through his body, and that's the whole intestinal tract, from the mouth to the other end. Well, then why do you have an extra 25 feet? You process food totally differently? And now what we're finding out about the bowel is that we call it the gut immune system. You have more immune system and lymph tissue in your intestinal tract than you do in the whole rest of your body. This is why antibiotics are so devastating to the health of Americans. We take them like they're candy. You get a sniffle, you got a sore thumb, you got a little infection. Well, we'll go home and soak your hand, folks. Don't pump an antibiotic through your whole body and wipe out your intestinal tract. And we're taking enough probiotics now to put a man on the moon, and it's not going to help if you keep destroying them. And meat diet has a different bacteria in the bowel versus a plant-based diet. If you want the healthy immune system, you can't do it on a meat-based diet. You have to do it on a plant-based diet. And I'm just covering the tip of the iceberg. And by the way, you keep going deeper and there's no discrepancy. It just gets a stronger and stronger and stronger argument. Biology of proteins, animal proteins. Intake, increase intake, you increase disease. It's hand in hand. It's high in saturated fat. Saturated fats tend to increase cholesterol production by the liver. The question is why? We know that for a fact. The reason you have more cholesterol production in the liver is because you have more inflammation in the body. Cholesterol is made in the body for everything from hormones to your nerve sheath. It's a precursor for vitamin D, but it's also made when you have too much inflammation. So if you have a vegetarian diet and your cholesterol is still high, we'll give you a year. Allow the body to adjust, decrease the inflammation, the cholesterol level should come down. In this situation, we know that high saturated fat intake increases inflammation in the blood vessels and therefore increases cholesterol levels. So, what about coconut oil? Extremely highly saturated. I can't believe that we've gone around this merry-go-round for another time. I was in school back in the 70s, and we ran around fence. Now listen, what are you doing? This is a highly saturated fat. They say, well, it's got this and it's got that. I go, wait a minute. It's a highly saturated fat. God put it in the tropics. Now, why would God put coconuts where coconuts grow? Because unsaturated fats are very sensitive to heat. And so if you're going to put a fat that's less sensitive to heat, you're going to put a fat that's more saturated in the tropics. So God didn't mess up here. We're messing up. Because if you want coconut oil, you eat the whole coconut. Then I know you're getting the antioxidants, you're getting the fat, you're getting the minerals, you're getting the vitamins, you're getting a whole picture. Short of that, we've got it.
So don't use the oil.
Of course not. That's easy.
Just to make that.
Exactly.
Just to make the oil.
I understand. I'm trying to get rid of disease. See, the point is, when I was in school, when it's training for heart disease, you get rid of coconut and palm oil because it messes up the cholesterol and inflammation in the vessel. Now there's whole books that are written on the value of coconut oil. The problem is, do your homework and you'll see that they're standing on a very fragile thing. The other thing we wind up with is the people that want to lower their cholesterol and they go on coconut oil will have it go up. However, if you're a steak and potato person and you go on coconut oil, some of those people come down. Always remember your starting point. You folks in this room are way ahead of the research. You cannot use the research until you know where they start. If you're starting with steak and potato and you see something change, that's it. If you're already a vegan, you're not at that point, folks. You're miles ahead. It's like taking fish oils to get your omega-3s. I'm going, what in the world are you doing that for? You're already a vegan. Why are you going and eating a fish oil? This will make your cholesterol go up. But a fish oil causes less cholesterol response than a beef steak. So if you're eating beef steak and go off that and take your omega-3s and fish oil, you will get some benefit. Always look at where the research starts. Otherwise, you will come up with an erroneous conclusion. I wish I had more vegan research. I don't have it yet. It will come. And it keeps coming. But you can do your own research. On the no fiber, it's low in antioxidants and it's low in vitamins. Well, where did the antioxidants and the vitamins go? The cow ate them. What do you expect? It's giving you the surplus, or what's that? The cow needed its vitamins. Now, when you eat plant foods, by the way, where does protein come from? There's only one source of protein, and that's plants. If you're not a plant, you've got to be eaten, or whatever. To make an animal have protein, it's got to eat something that is protein. So the cow eats the plant. If you eat the cow, that's called secondary. It's called leftovers. 2-day-old, no, I won't not get graphic. We haven't had lunch yet, I'm okay. You see my point? If you want to get protein, you will get it from the original source, and you'll be less contaminated. It also will be less concentrated. Protein in some of your sea animals, some of your fish, runs over 90% of the muscle that people eat is pure protein. You never find protein that high in the vegetable kingdom. I happen to label the highest and name the highest, which was broccoli. When you eat plant proteins, increase intake, you don't get increase in disease. So if you're going to blow it on protein, make sure it's at least vegetable, and I prefer you don't blow it. It is low in poly and monounsaturated fats. It is high in dietary fiber. It's high in antioxidants, and it's high in vitamins. The immune system responds to different proteins. 2 proteins that it responds to are phenylalanine and tyrosine. If we take a diet and we make them low in those amino acids and low in those protein, we get a stimulation of the immune system. The T helper cells, this is thymus cells, part of your immune system. Cytotoxic, well, that's the ones that kill cells, and natural killers. If we go back, that's after 28 days, if we go back to a typical American diet high in those protein, then we get a decrease in every cell except for the natural killers, and they continue to go up for a while and it just takes longer for them to come back down. But we actually get a suppression of the immune system by these foods. Now guess what I recommended to, I don't know, hundreds of heart patients of mine in early in my career. Don't use whole milk, go skim milk. Have 3 or less eggs per week. Don't go for the high-fat cheeses, go for the string cheeses. You know, if you can wiggle them and it wiggles around, it probably is less fat in that. You know, and you go through this whole regime of lowering fat. Low-fat this, low-fat that. Well, every one of those low-fat products I just told you about, whether it be skim milk, whether it be low-fat cottage cheese, what did I do to my patient? I doubled or tripled their protein. When you take the fat out of something, what do you have left in that skim milk? Protein and water, etc., etc. Cottage cheese, take the fat away, a lot more protein. That's what we did. Look, incredible. Obviously, I'll give you a few examples. Applesauce is low, apples, cabbage, all the way down here. The only one on this chart, and I'm not recommending you get rid of your lentils, I'm just showing you that legumes can be higher than these. So obviously you're going to have something else besides beans all the time. You're going to have your cabbage and everything else for your whole diet. But look at the average. Okay, 1 egg, not a 3-egg omelet, 1 egg, 332, 255. 1 cup of whole milk, 388 in each category. Crab meat, people would consider this, even though it's unclean, they're going to consider it a white meat and therefore low in fat. But look at the 800 and over 600. Tuna, that healthy food. No, people think that's not, they think that's vegetarian. Well, you've been to a restaurant and you tell them you're a vegetarian, and so they ask you what kind of fish you want. No, I'm serious. If this doesn't happen to you, I'll be surprised, because that is the mindset. So tuna, 3 ounces of tuna almost 1,000 and over 800. Beef steak, 1,000 plus 800. Chicken, 1,100, almost 1,150, and almost 1,000. The foods that we were telling our people to consume, I want you to eat more chicken and more fish to reduce your heart disease. What were we actually doing? I was suppressing the immune system, and we have bought this thing for the past 30 years, and our cancer rate is just going right out through the roof. Amazing. Colon cancer and meal frequency. How many meals do you need a day? Well, 2 or less meals a day. Risk of colon cancer and rectal cancer, colon, they set that equal to 1. If I eat 3 meals a day, I have increased risk, almost doubles, and 1.5 here. If I eat 4 meals a day, it almost doubles. See, it's really simple. If I'm eating something bad and I'm eating more of it more frequently, I'm going to have more bowel problems. If I'm eating something bad and I eat less of it or less frequently, I'm going to have less problems. It's that simple. The bowel is about exposure. If you eat a high fiber diet, like I was talking about when I first started, why do Adventist men and women have less colon cancer? It's because they eat more fruits and vegetables than the average population. They have higher fiber in their diet. So even if they're eating something terrible, they're going to have less exposure of it. How about sleep? You thought that didn't make a difference. Sleep deprivation affects your immune system. Men who slept only 4 hours a night ate 22% more calories the next day. Why'd they eat that much more? What do we have in our brain that says, eat more when I'm tired? We got that in our brain. No, you believe, you've been told somewhere, and maybe it has worked for you, that if you're really tired and you eat more, it might pick you up. But let me ask you this, what kind of foods do you have to eat to pick you up? It's got to be sugar or something stimulating. You watch what people eat. Coffee and donuts. Babe Ruth candy bar. They still make those things? Used to have when I was a kid. I guess they're still around. Etc. I haven't had a candy bar for a while. The point is that people who are sleep deprived eat more than when they're not sleep deprived. Your body can't handle all the fuel, and it's not just the fuel, it's the refined fuel that gets to you. Number 2, studies found that a single night with only 4 hours of sleep led to insulin resistance in 75% of the men and women that were in their 40s, and these weren't diabetics. When your insulin level goes up, you've got a real problem on your hands, because what happens here is sleep-deprived people have higher insulin levels, and insulin shoves food into storage, and when the insulin level is up, it won't let it come out. So these same people that have eaten too much on a regular basis have insulin resistance, and they can't lose the way they would. I believe people when they walk in the office and say, I'm having a hard time losing weight. I just don't. I mean, I'm eating less and still not losing weight. So then I give my cabbage sermon. By the way, in case you even have any doubt, I have not found the first person that's ever failed on. I will guarantee you that everyone in America can lose weight. No problem. They say, how can you guarantee that? I said, it works every time. If you eat nothing but cabbage, I will guarantee you that you cannot eat enough cabbage to either maintain or gain weight. You will all lose weight on cabbage. Now, I didn't say cabbage plus pork. You don't get to cook that. I didn't say cabbage plus anything. I said just steamed or fresh cabbage. I didn't say coleslaw, because you get out the mayonnaise and really mess things up good. Because the fat content, not because all mayonnaises are bad. You see my point? Back to the story. Why am I so upset about high insulin levels? You need it, right? Diabetics need more of it. Insulin as a molecule is very inflammatory to your blood vessel wall. You want enough to do the job, and you want no more than that. In our diets, the more refined diet we eat, we continue to mess up our blood vessels. We cause more inflammation. we produce more cholesterol. And we block up our vessels, we starve the body of oxygen, and we wind up cells that suffer. And that's when that first slide that I said, it's intriguing that societies with high rates of atherosclerosis also have prostate, colon, and breast cancer. It's a complete cycle here. They were less able to move blood into their cell, blood sugar in their cells. Insulin resistance can lead to heart disease, diabetes, and possibly breast cancer. Cancer of the skin is the most common cancer and the least problem. Basal cell and squamous cell, the non-melanomas, are the most common and the least deadly. But what's causing them? We blame it on sun. And now the research has come out and showing that even some sun is beneficial to these cancers. So it's not just the sun. Let's take a look. A diet low in fat, they're calling 21% low here. In that particular group, the number of lesions, the number of skin cancers was 3. The other group, the average American, about 40% of their calories from fat, their number was 10. So what do I learn from this? First of all, fat isn't the only cause. There are other reasons to have skin cancer. But when I reduce the fat intake, I'm a lot less susceptible to problems with the skin. Now, if skin cancer was affected only by sun, I would expect people who live at the equator to have a lot more skin cancer. And as we move north or south to the poles, we'd have less cancer. Well, guess what? We find just the opposite. So stop blaming it on sun. I'm not telling you to go out there and get burnt or a tan where actually your skin starts to peel, because that means damage has been done. That's why I think we still have 3% here. And then I also know that my skin isn't like it was when I was 20. It gets wrinkles that don't come out, you know. You go to sleep and you wake up and you wonder how you're going to get that one out, you know. This is a fun slide, but it brings a point home to Americans, and that is we don't even realize what we're eating. Some of these I have a hard time even pronouncing. You have to work with me here. A small bucket of Cineplex popcorn. It says a small bucket, folks, not the tub that they serve now. 6 Kentucky Fried drumsticks, 42 pounds of jelly bean. By the way, I'm not recommending you eat any of this, okay? I'm just showing you an example. Now here we got it. 500 carrots. All these foods have the equivalent of 50 grams of fat in. So therefore, if you want to cut your fat, you can eat 500 carrots for the same amount of fat as sitting down to 1 small bucket of popcorn. People don't even realize that. If I told them, if I brought out 3 baskets of carrots and I said, carry these when you're going to watch your favorite show tonight, and you have to eat all these by the time you're done with the show, you see my point. I mean, how long would it take to eat 500 carrots? Even juicing 500 carrots would take you a while. But look at it, it's incredible. Whoever this general is, I don't know why I got his name, 1,500 calories, 3 McDonald's quarter pounders, 5 pounds of white turkey meat, I guess that's supposed to be good or something, 2,950 radishes. Let's come down here. Chimichanga, whatever. 9.5 dozen donuts, 86 pieces of Wonder Bread. But you can, for the same amount of fat, you can have 172 apples. Of course, the last one is my favorite because I like potatoes. Fettuccine Alfredo, 1 dish. You go out and eat 1 dish, 1 night at a restaurant. 5 Hostess cherry pies, 31 pieces of broiled bacon, or 485 potatoes. Can you imagine being able to eat 400? That is a potato and a half every day for a whole year that I get, and this guy eats out once. Now you see what's wrong in America. They don't realize it. And by the way, all the labeling laws, I don't know who they're doing it for. People are going to eat what they're going to eat until they see something with more impact. Meat use in breast cancer, Low socioeconomic status, eating meat occasionally or rarely or not at all, the risk is 1. High socioeconomic status, eating meat daily. We think that because we don't have something besides pinto beans and rice and collards that we're eating very poorly. That's why I said earlier this morning, if you're so broke you can't afford the junk, I think it's a blessing. Because usually what we do is what? We spend our money on convenience foods that usually are not healthy. See, in my area, in the mountains of North Carolina, they call it killing the greens. Now, they do eat greens. They get their collards or their Swiss chard, or we have what we call creases in our area, which have a real bite to it, almost like mustard greens. But then when they say kill it, they fry their bacon, they take the grease from the bacon, and they kill the greens. And that's good eating, folks, but not for me. But the point is, the greens still have some redeeming value. But I'll tell you what, I think those mountain folks where I live, the best thing that ever happens to them is when they are so broke, they get a lot less meat, and they live on their beans and their greens through the winter. And the potatoes they can grow and keep through the winter, and maybe a few apples when the tree does okay. I don't feel sorry for them. Even though they think all those poor people that live in the Appalachians, they're so poor, they're so suppressed. I go, wait a minute. These people know how to live on $1,000 a month and live healthier than all you people sitting up there in Washington trying to figure out how you can get them some more money, because they're just going to go buy Pop-Tarts. Don't give them more money. You know? Twinkies. This is Adventists compared to Mormons. General population, we said 100%. Mormon women, this is total cancer death rate, mortality. Mormon women have 83% of the general population, or a 17% decrease in general population. So what do we have here? We have something that these people are doing right. So what are Mormon women known for? They don't drink, they don't smoke, but they sure love their red meat, and that's why this study was done. We want to find out how much red meat affects longevity, and Mormons, in some of their health habits, especially smoking and drinking, are similar to Adventists. So the difference in these two groups, the biggest difference is red meat consumption. Also, no meat consumption in the Adventist group, where you more than likely won't find that in the Mormons. Mormon men, about 68% as compared to 100%. Adventist women, 68%. And Adventist men are about half of the cancer rate of the general population. And this includes the vegans, the vegetarians, and the meat eaters in that group. We're talking just a total group. Eating meat, poultry, and fish increases ovarian cancer. So lacto-ovo-vegetarian, 15.9 per 100,000. Meat 1 to 3 times per week, 18. Meat 4 times a week, 26%. Obesity and increase from death from cancer. Once again, the more weight we carry, the more problem. Now look at this. Ladies, for some reason, I know men have more heart disease, but when it comes to cancer, weight affects ladies much worse than men do. That's no excuse for us men to be overweight. I'm not trying to get us off the hook. I'm just saying that certain things cause people more cancer. And ladies, this is all cancer, okay? But when the man is at 20 to 30% above his average weight, he is at 9% increase in risk, and the lady is 19, over twice. The man, when he's 30 to 40% overweight, is 14% increase in death from cancer. The lady is 23. When you're 40% above your weight, that means if you're supposed to weigh 150, you'd be weighing 210. So if you're 40% overweight, men are at 33 and women are at 55% increase. Don't ask me why, but you ladies, if anyone should be skinny, it should be the ladies, and us men will be fat. No, don't do it that way. But it affects the men less, so weight affects you more. Now, why is it true? Let's go back through the diseases. Women, why do women have breast cancer? Because weight affects you a lot more hormonally than it does men. Now I'm going to tell you ladies a secret about men. Why are men such wimps these days? No, I'm serious. This is the way they eat, how they act, and what they do. Do you know, men, that you make estrogen in your fat tissue? If you want a bunch of wimpy men, fatten them up. Ladies, you can't tolerate the estrogen either. You come out with a lot more cancer than we do. The concept of weight is not just how you look in the mirror, folks. The concept of weight is called, do you want your mind? Do you want your health? And what is it? I have a real simple trick. When this starts getting too big, guess what I stop doing? Yeah, I stop eating. Because I've eaten too much. It's obvious. You know, it doesn't take, that's not rocket science. You don't have to have your PhD to figure that one out. So why am I so hard on weight? It's because of the disease potential. And for you to be overweight, think of it this way. For you to be overweight, you have to eat more fuel than what the body needs, and it's storing it. It's that simple. And by the way, go to the gymnasium and weigh everybody, well, they'll probably hit you. Weigh everybody that goes in, come back a year later, and weigh everybody again. Guess what you're going to find out? They've worked out all year there, and they still weigh the exact same weight. Maybe a few inches less, maybe a little more muscle, but folks, here's the point. You don't lose weight by exercising. You lose weight by closing your mouth. No, hang in there with me. We have believed, everybody walks in my office, I haven't lost weight. Oh, well, I haven't been able to exercise. It's been raining, you know. Or I had that one piece of chocolate cake. I say, listen, if you put the whole piece of chocolate cake in your back pocket and I weighed you, it wouldn't weigh as much as you do now. You can't make something out of nothing. So here's the issue. You don't exercise to lose weight. You exercise to improve circulation, to improve your heart strength, to improve your vessel wall health, and yes, you do burn a few calories. But if you try to exercise your weight off, you have to go 35 miles to burn 1 pound of fat. Or you go to the gym and you work out and you burn 300 calories and then you pass Dunkin' Donuts and one donut will blow your whole workout. You can always out-eat your workout, even on good food. So don't play the game, but also don't stop exercising. Say, I'm doing this for my brain, I'm doing this for my health, but if I truly need to lose weight, I have to cut some fuel. It's the first law of thermodynamics, I guess. And we're back to this. And it's a good place to stop. We'll continue this afternoon. The RAVE diet is a simple acronym for you to put it together. And really, all you really would need is the R program. Because if you truly ate nothing that was refined, you would automatically do everything right. But just to flesh it out a little bit, avoid animal products. By the way, this is not an Adventist program. This is Dr. Campbell and Dr. Esselstyn. The third thing that gets most of us is those vegetable oils. Your body can't handle it. It is not made to handle it. If you want corn oil, go eat 2 ears of corn. And of course, E, their program said no exceptions and no excuses, and I couldn't let up a good thing, so I said people need to exercise. But remember, you exercise to improve circulation and to take care of your brain. Burning the fuel, doing it that way, it's difficult. Now, what I told you about me, if I'm out there working hard all day and sweating, and we've had our share of humidity, I don't know if you've had it here this summer, it was so warm, no, it was so humid in the mountains of North Carolina that I could walk outside almost and do minimal before I'd break a sweat. I hadn't even started working hard yet. And I used to tell people, you know, I know when I've worked hard because my trousers are wet almost to my knees. And I'm just totally sweat. This summer, it was getting to my ankles. It's hard to keep yourself well hydrated, and then the rest of the day you try to keep yourself from cramping up and drinking enough water, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, yeah. I live in a real world too. You may think my idea is a little bit extreme, but I do sweat. I do work hard. I eat and I try to drink my water just like you. And I'm not sure I like water any better or any worse than you, but if that's the only thing you're going to drink, it starts tasting pretty good. You know? And good water helps too.
Yeah.
So if you need some good spring water, I'll give you all you want when you come and see me. How's that? We've got a few thousand gallons running out of the mountain on a regular basis. Anyway, we need to close here. I'm going to just have closing prayer.